Look, let's be honest. Navigating the world of benefits can be a total nightmare, especially when you're already dealing with a health condition. And the Personal Independence Payment, or PIP, well, that whole process can feel confusing, super stressful, and just incredibly high stakes.
But here's the thing I really want you to hear. If you feel that way, you are absolutely not alone. Thousands and thousands of people are going through this exact same process every year. So, what we're going to do here is break down the whole journey. We're going to demystify the rules and hopefully arm you with the knowledge you need to make your case as clearly as you possibly can.
All right, we've broken it down into 4 key stages. First up, we're cracking the PIP code, how it all works. Then we'll get into mastering that all-important claim form. After that, navigating the assessment. And finally, we'll talk about the decision and the super important appeals process. Okay, let's get right into it.
Okay, so first things first. If you want to have a successful PIP claim, you've got to understand the rules of the game. And here's the most important rule. It's not about your diagnosis. It is all about how your condition affects you day to day.
So, PIP is basically split into 2 main parts, or components. Think of them like 2 separate buckets. You've got the daily living component, which is all about your ability to handle everyday stuff. And then there's the mobility component, which, you guessed it, is about your ability to get around. And you can qualify for one or even both. It just depends on your specific needs.
So, how do they decide? Well, it all boils down to a point system. It's pretty straightforward. For each of those 2 components we just mentioned, you need to score between 8 and 11 points to get the standard rate, and if you score 12 points or more, you get the enhanced rate.
Okay, but where do these points come from? It's not just random. Assessors use a specific list of statements called descriptors. Think of them like pre-written descriptions for different activities, things like preparing food or washing and bathing. They just pick the one that best matches the level of help you need, and each of those descriptors has a set number of points attached to it.
Now, this brings us to what might be the single most important word in this entire process: reliably. Seriously, burn this word into your brain. This isn't just a nice idea. It comes straight from the DWP's own rulebook. It means it's not enough to just do a task. You have to be able to do it safely, to an acceptable standard, over and over again, and in a reasonable amount of time. If you can't tick all 4 of those boxes, then legally, you should be scored as if you can't do the task at all. That is huge.
All right, so now that we know the rules, let's talk about the claim form. This thing it's your main stage. It is your biggest opportunity to explain exactly how your condition impacts you, and you've got to do it using the language of the system we just went over.
So the million-dollar question is, how do you actually do that? I mean, how do you take your day-to-day reality, all the struggles, and translate that into answers on a 50-page form?
Well, here's one of the most powerful pieces of advice you'll hear from people who've been through this. Talk about your worst day and only your worst day. Now, I know some official guidance says to describe how you are most of the time, but the logic here is solid. If your condition goes up and down, the DWP needs to understand the full picture, not just what you can get by with on a good day when your symptoms aren't as bad.
To really make your case, you have to be super specific and detailed. You've got to remember, the person reading this form has never met you. They know nothing about you, so state the obvious. Don't just say you can't do something, you have to explain why you can't. Try to use that descriptor language we talked about. Give them specific real-life examples of what happens when things go wrong. And please, don't just tick the box that says it varies. Explain in detail what a bad day actually looks and feels like.
And here's the good news. You don't have to pull all of this language out of thin air. There are some incredible charities out there that offer fantastic resources with suggested phrases to help you frame your difficulties in just the right way, a way that clicks with the assessment criteria.
Just look at these examples. They really show the power of detail. See, it's the difference between saying cooking is hard and explaining why it's hard. These answers point to real issues: clumsiness, poor attention, being easily distracted, needing constant reminders to be safe. That's the kind of detail that paints a vivid, undeniable picture for the person reading your form.
Okay, so you get the form sent in. What's next? Well, for most people, it's an invitation to an assessment. And yeah, for a lot of us, this is the most stressful part of the whole thing. But trust me, being prepared can make a world of difference.
First, let's just put this assessment into context. According to Capita, one of the companies that runs these, the assessment is only step 4 in a 5-step process. So yes, it's a big deal, but it's not the only deal. The final decision is still made by the DWP, and they're supposed to look at everything: your form, your evidence, and this assessment.
And this is where we see 2 completely different worlds collide. You have the official line, which says, hey, we're just here to help, we're not trying to catch you out. But then you have the real-world experience of so many claimants who say they get asked these tricky, hypothetical questions, things like, well, just imagine you could do it, to get them to describe something they can't actually do. This is exactly why you have to be so careful and just stick to the facts of your life.
So what can you do? It all comes back to preparation. Before that call or meeting, read your form again. Know it inside and out. If you can, have someone there with you for support. And listen, it is perfectly okay to say, I don't know or I can't remember. Most importantly, this is not the time to be brave or hide how you're feeling. Be honest about your pain. And never ever let the assessor put words in your mouth. Stick to your truth.
Right, so the assessment is done. Then comes the wait, and then the decision. And whether it's good news or not, you absolutely have to know what your options are for what comes next.
So that letter arrives, you open it, and it's not what you hoped for. It can feel completely devastating, like a punch to the gut. But I'm here to tell you it is not the end of the road, not even close. In fact, for a lot of people, this is just the beginning of the next and most important phase, the appeal.
Okay, so the first step in an appeal is something called a mandatory reconsideration. It's basically you asking the DWP to, well, reconsider their own decision. But look at that number. The success rate is really low. We're talking only about 27%. And you can see why that would make anyone feel like just giving up. But please, don't.
Because look what happens if you push past that stage. Look what happens when you take your case to an independent tribunal. The success rate just skyrockets. We're talking 68%. That is a totally different ballgame.
I mean, just look at that side by side. The difference is staggering, right? Your chances of actually winning more than double the moment your case gets in front of an independent panel, completely separate from the people who made the first decision.
And this, right here, this is maybe the most important thing you need to hear today. A huge number of claimants, 65% of them, they give up after that first mandatory reconsideration fails. They stop right there, right before the one stage where they are actually very likely to win. This tells you everything. Persistence is key.
So from cracking the code and filling out that form, to getting through the assessment and, if you have to, fighting through the appeals, this whole journey takes knowledge. Yeah, but it also takes resilience. So I want to leave you with this question. Now that you know the odds, now that you see the data, how could that one simple act of just not giving up completely change the outcome of your journey?